Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Retrospective Paths Podcast. Today, I have with me the wonderful, amazing, talented Ann Potenza. Thank you for being here, Ann. I am so happy that you are here. Thank you for agreeing to do this with me. Ann is the host of the amazing podcast, Women Who Kick Glass. Did I say that right? Yes, I did.
Yes. And if you drop the GL and it becomes Women Who Kick Gas, that's okay too.
I love that too.
Kidding.
I mean, and that's kind of how I read it at first. When I first saw you come up on my feed, I was like, "Women Who Kick Ass? That's amazing."
Yeah, that was the
Anyway.
original title until I'm like, wait, I do want my teenage niece to be able to, listen to this with her friends and not get banned, by parents in the beginning. So we're like, well, and it wound up perfect. I'm like, glass. I'm like, we kick glass. I'm like, we're always about breaking the glass ceiling. That's what women have been trying to do for centuries. And you know what? Instead of let's do it with our feet because we like shoes and we kick them and we got high kicks and we can kick gas and kick glass and you know what? That's what the purpose of my podcast is, to highlight women who are literally doing what they can in the time that they have, in their passion, their vision, and what's important to them. So encouraging message in these times when we need them.
Absolutely.
I'm here to get in. Let's dive in.
Yes. So, so a little about Ann. I've known Ann for, over a decade, I would imagine, back in
longer.
When I used to work at Kimball.
But are we going to date ourselves? Yes.
We don't need to do that.
Longer. No, it's okay. Since I'm older than you, I will say the decades are good. They get better with age. It's okay. I'm like, but I don't want to, push it too far. Yeah, a decade we've known each other.
And you've always had the best energy. I've always felt I could just talk to you and your sisters and cousins, everyone. So once again, I'm so glad that
my dad loved you to death on the show.
Uncle
loved
Frank.
You. Not to bring up Uncle Frank and loving you, and you've just always been a bright burst of energy with a good heart. So we love you, Z.
Thank you. Yeah, you guys, like the whole family, I feel like, even after all these years, it's still
absolutely. It doesn't end. It doesn't end. Definitely
so
connected.
It's awesome. Yes. So your pod. So where did this come from? Where, how did this develop in your mind? Have you always been an advocate for women? What's going on?
I've always, this is the thing, I'm one of three sisters. My parents, we grew up, there were girls in the family, and we grew up not thinking about gender or what we were doing. It was like, whatever you want to do it. So we had the world at our fingertips. I'm very lucky to have grown up with, a father who, it didn't matter whether we were born boy or girl. My mother, she was a very strong, very strong personality. So we were fortunate that we grew up with really good women strength messages, I think if you want to know the truth, my very first thing that I remember making an impact is the movie Norma Ray with Sally Field.
Yeah.
Yes. I remember that as one of my first. She's holding up the sign, to unionize. And I remember that being one of the first movies that really, I just loved that she did that in her character. And that was one of the first influences of seeing a strong woman, depicted through the arts, which is what I absolutely love. And that's why I love, because it's based on true stories that have happened to people. So that was the first thing I remember. Then growing up, just did our thing, nothing, and it really was only during the pandemic when we were all on lockdown. All of a sudden I was going through the computer and I see it's the 100th anniversary of the women's right to vote. And I was like, oh my God, this is a milestone. How are we're in lockdown and we can't even celebrate it. And that's one thing. So voting is always been something, take political differences. I think voting to me is the most important thing that we could do as a citizen. I grew up with that. Like, it was always very important to vote because that's our voice. That's the way we as American citizens can express ourselves, right? A lot of people out there talking, but the only way it makes a difference is if you actually cast that ballot and you make your voice heard. So that's something I grew up with my family and my parents. So during the pandemic, when all of a sudden I started reading about the women's right to vote, being on lockdown, I'm like, we're not having any parades. We're not having like any celebration. And the country is a lot older than 100 years old. It's only been 100 years. And I started going down, the like rabbit hole and found out that when we actually got the vote in 1920, which we're like, the country was founded in the 1700s, so we didn't get it till 1920. And during that time, there was a pandemic 100 years ago too. So I'm like, okay, what is it with the coincidences of women getting the right to vote during a pandemic and our 100th anniversaries during a pandemic? And then I started reading about the women who made the cause, and I was looking at them like, these are real women. These are women who were younger than me at the time, women that were older than me. And we were in the middle of obviously we've been in a hot political climate for, the last decade lately. So, being on lockdown and everything that was happening politically, and knowing that a lot of people don't think that voting is important. They don't see the value. When I read that women got the vote from one vote, because when they brought it up, it had to be ratified by all the states. And there was one congressman that cast the final vote in their state legislature. And that's what got it ratified and I was like, that is the most important single vote ever. And when people don't, and we've seen so many examples of the votes being saved, or people being elected by a small margin, and people, they don't think they matter. And I'm like, look at history, you matter. If more people knew how important they were to our society and to our political climate, and maybe it would become more important, because when you look at how many people actually vote in the elections, and you realize almost a third of our country don't vote, you're like, what is it? Why? But then you're like, is your vote being suppressed? Are you just not educated? Do you just don't think it matters? Or, what are the factors? So my thing was, coming out of that, at a pandemic, is like, I really want to encourage people to vote. How could I do that? And that's where it started. And then,
Yes.
can I keep going? Or like, I don't want to take,
absolutely.
okay, about these women. And what I loved about them is there were these speeches that they gave in important times, this is a woman from the 1800s that when it started. And they were giving these important speeches in front of people who were not, think about, we're used to it now, but think of like going up there and someone saying like, you don't even have a right to be up here, and being booed and jeered, and in the face of what they knew they needed, because they're like, we're not represented. Half of the country, half women, were not represented in any decision making. And what I started to realize is, I really wanted, what can I do to make these women who had powerful voices be heard? And so, of course, in the midst of any crazy time in our lives, that's when art comes, artistic things happen. I'm like, maybe I could do a show of their speeches, because I think of when we go to, and there were all these political speeches. I'm like, if you are sitting in the audience listening to these women talk about all the points, almost the same issues we're going through today in other ways, what would you do? Yeah. Would that encourage you to go to the ballot box? Would that encourage you to get involved? Would that encourage you to do something yourself? So I thought, maybe I could show the journey of these women through their speeches. So a couple years out of pandemic, I'm like, I've got to do it. And I decided to do a show called The War of Roses, a theater, a stage show. And that's how it started. I remember
seeing that on your,
yes. And that's how this started, because I'm like, you know what? If anything, I can bring their voices back to life. And I learned about them. I love them. Maybe someone will be inspired and hear themselves or see themselves in what these women were passionate about. And so I did a stage show. It was a weekend show, and we did it for Women's History Month, because I'm like, that's our month, even though we should be celebrating all the time. Like, love that we have March for Women's History Month. So I launched that last year, and that was the start. I chose 19 suffragists for the 19th Amendment. There's so many, there's so many women I could have chosen from, but I decided to choose from the beginning, from Abigail Adams at the very beginning, and go the journey up to the 1920s through the speeches, because it's really over 100, 200 years that the speeches and what was the issue of the day, what they were speaking out against. So that's how I was inspired with these women. So it was through the War of Roses. And then, and then I wanted to do that again. And theater is very expensive. It's hard. And I was so excited that after that weekend, that yes, we had 19 amazing actresses. I had a couple of actors that were part of this. But then I'm like, I want this message to continue. So after the last election that we just had in November 2024, I was
Right.
furious, and we'll get into that. And then that's what I thought, all
Yes.
right, I've got to bring these women back to life. Their voices have to go back out there. So that's what started me on the podcast. It was because of the election. I'm like, these voices need to be heard, and more people need to hear them, and they're relevant
Yes.
to what we're going through today.
Yes, and it
So
was so funny when I came across, thank you for sharing all that. But when I came across your IG handle and I was like, what is Ann doing? This is awesome. And when I started launching my pod, that's how I was like, oh, we need to talk.
I know. I said, and then I saw yours. I'm like, oh my God, Zia's doing a podcast too. I was like, this is amazing. And I love it because I love what you're doing with yours. And
Thank
when
you.
you asked me about, I was like, of course. I'm like, because you right now are your voice is being heard and you're bringing other people's voice heard. And honestly, the thing is, I'm doing this whether one person listens and it makes a difference or millions. I'm doing it, and
Absolutely.
I'm like, I feel like a curator of helping voices to be heard that are easily lost in we have
Yes.
so much noise around us. So my
You're a
goal, my
conduit. Yeah.
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. You're
So
like a
that's
conduit
why,
that's giving out.
yeah, it's not about it. It's literally about these women, and it's starting. I'm just going to tell you a little preview. It's starting with
Love
these
it.
women for like the first season because I'm like the first
Okay.
season is the foundation, are the women
Okay.
who kick glass to God get us the vote, and then
Right.
I'm not stopping. Then it's going to go into that. So then you get the vote, and you're like, all right, so now what? So then it's like we're not done, obviously. So once we got the vote, then there was a whole new group of challenges we had to face, and there was a large push trying to get the ERA amendment going. So the next chapter are the women from the 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s that have
Love
been
it.
trying since then. So we're not done. And then I figure eventually we'll come back, we'll come to modern days because there's so many women. And that's the other thing. I was angry when I started this. I was angry because of
Mm.
really angry. So this was my way of how can I redirect the anger?
You're
And
alchemizing. You are
is that what it is?
alchemizing that anger. I mean, that's what I choose to see. That's how I see things. It's like whenever we have these moments that we have anger, we have like pivotal moments in our lives that just happen and we don't know why and we don't know what to do with that. And it's all this stuck energy. And now I feel like this could be you're alchemizing that anger into
It really
the
is because
content that you're putting out there.
thank you, because that's what because I'll tell you the two things that made me angry. The first was listen. Well, there's three. There were certain people who didn't vote in the last election because they didn't want to vote for you know they didn't want to vote for either one because they were annoyed with that. And I'm like, there's got to be some differences because you're here in this country. There's got to be some differences for you to either vote for one or the other. Our two major political parties. To sit out is just giving into whoever has the loudest voice or whoever is, you're letting your voice go away. So that was the first thing that upset me. Like people personally that I knew that were just frustrated. I just don't want to pay attention. I want to tune out. I'm like, you
Right.
guys, we can't tune out. We can't from this what we're going through because we're all still recovering from the pandemic and we haven't, and we've gone
Right.
through like politics wasn't a part of my life growing up. Like I wanted to go into the arts. Politics was not something. And I think now if I was a kid now, I probably would want to go to law school because you want to like go
Right.
in there and like help the people who aren't who need representation and people who you want to be like a lawmaker. But I'm like that wasn't my path in life. But there are a whole new generation of people nowadays that are probably inspired. So I do love
Yeah.
that politics is in our life because there's going to be a whole new generation of amazing there are children now, youth now, who are going to be the next leaders. So if this is what
Yes.
got us out of the apathy of just like, yeah, everybody will take care of it, that I like about our politics now, that people are involved, people are engaged. Then as soon as the election happened, my niece, my
Mhm.
sister, Vicky's daughter, Frankie, who's 14 years old, she told me she went to school day after the election. And then there were boys, like she's only 14. At the time, she was
Right.
13. Boys saying, your body, my choice, your body, my choice. And I was
Wow.
like, how are 13-year-olds getting that message and saying that to my niece, young lady, 13 years old, the start of her youth of being a young woman. And how is that message even out there for anyone? And that pissed me off because they were hearing it, whether they're hearing
It's coming
parents
from
saying
their
it,
home.
it's
Yes.
it's coming from that
Oh my God.
your body, my choice. I was like,
Oh,
I never even had to deal with that, you know?
the
So
way I
that,
would show up at that school so quick if I heard
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
I
So
would show up.
I was pissed at that, but then I was really proud. I was proud of Frankie for standing up to those boys and being
Good.
like she already knew. I'm like, the fact that you're 13 years old and you have to know about politics, like that's wrong. You should be worrying about, a lot simpler things. But anyway, she stood up for herself. So
Good.
you stand up for yourself, you put it back in, she shut him up, which was good. But that bothered me because I'm
Yes.
like, how many other people are going through that right now? That's a message that came out right away, right after the election. And then what made me think about the podcast was another person, someone who's in the media, who said the women used to think women think it's a glass ceiling, but it's actually made of bricks. And he tried to equate the glass ceiling as being a brick ceiling. And I was like, oh, I'm going to take that brick and I will, like friggin' Wonder Woman, I will
I love
push.
it.
Oh, hell no. You didn't
Right.
think that you're seen as a brick ceiling? So that even more. So those were my anger
You were
bursts. I
fired
mean,
up.
they're
Yes.
mild
No,
compared to other people's, but for me, that's a lot, right? So as soon as I heard
listen.
that, and
Yeah.
it was through a podcast that message was, both of those messages were getting out. I'm like, who am I? I'm nobody. I'm like, I need to do a podcast and I want to, say what I have to say. But this is the message. Who am I? I'm just an average person. I'm not a celebrity. I, just starting out, but I'm like, you know what? Put it out there. Don't worry about the
Yes.
results. That's the key to why I'm doing this, why you're doing this. It's like, I'm not
Yes.
looking for the results. I'm just going to share what I think could offset the bad messaging. So do we try to defend ourselves to these ignorant people who are saying terrible things? No. But let me help empower the people who need empowering. So that's how I redirected my anger and thought, let's do a podcast. Let me get my women, my women.
Yeah.
So I gotta tell you, sometimes I feel like with these 19, I feel like I've got 19 women hanging around me all the time, and
You
friends.
probably do.
I know. I feel like I have
Those
like a
could be
whole
your
party of
spirit guides.
totally.
I'm
That's how
very
I
much
feel.
into that stuff.
So am I. I believe it.
Yes.
So I'm looking at my poster right now across from me with the women. I'm sitting there going, they're like, yeah, like we're just, our time on earth is done, but our message isn't done. And that's the beauty. That's why I love the
Yes.
arts, is because we're only here in life for a short time. But the work that we do, whatever it is, the smallest gesture to the biggest person can last many, many generations. And sometimes it takes people who, there are people that help that message along the way. So I see myself right now as to help the message of strong women, people who speak up for themselves, I'm concentrating on feminists. There are men who are feminists too. I mean, I'm happily married. He's supportive of what I'm doing. And it's like, there are great men in our history also who have because it's not about man and woman. It's just about all, equality for all. I don't care
Yes.
what, if you are an American, we're talking about an American citizen, but we're even talking on a global scale for all human beings. It's very simple. Like, we should all just be, there's no reason why we can't all coexist. I mean, we're only here for a short time. And God
I
knows
know
what's
that's
going to
right.
happen afterwards, but we're
Yep.
here. So let's make the best of
Yep.
it. So
That
that's
part.
thank you for
Exactly.
hearing
No.
yeah.
Oh,
So I changed it to like, I want to empower, I want to talk about empowering women. And as I started researching, it doesn't end. So I started laughing to myself, like, well, Anne, you started out last year when you did the show, it was easy. You were only doing 19 women. You have now opened up your Pandora's box because this isn't ending. So like, I'm going to be a 90-year-old lady, if podcasts still exist, and going, we've got another woman who invented, she cured cancer, like, yes, well, woman, she busted through
right.
that, she kicked that glass
You could
ceiling,
keep going.
Exactly. So
There's a lot of material out there.
yeah, so I'm
Yeah.
excited because I keep seeing people that I'm like, oh, I want to talk about them. I'm like, all right, I gotta save you for down the road. You're my future, I'm like,
Yes.
I'm learning along with whoever's listening. I'm
Yeah.
learning. I learned about these women. I'm learning about other women, and I'm proud of them. So when people say, "Oh, women's places in the kitchen, barefoot, pregnant, and doing nothing," I'm like, "Oh yeah,
Yeah.
if they want to be, great." But then when they're done,
Sure.
they're gonna go clock in and then run the world. They could do both,
Exactly.
right?
Which actually takes me to my next question. So you said you're learning a lot more about these other women and what they've done, and I think that's awesome because for someone, like for myself, I listened to your pods and I was drawn to the Matilda Jocelyn Gage. Is that how is that
Yes,
her name? Yeah.
Matilda Jocelyn Gage.
So I
Yes.
had never heard of her. I didn't know who that was. But when you started kind of going into her story, I was like, that's awesome. And I'm a fan of, the witch hunts and the real narrative behind it, really, like what the witch hunts really meant.
Yes.
And I thought that
That's
was
what
really interesting too.
And I didn't know about that. And it's weird how things piece together because she spoke out a lot against the witch trials, and didn't realize, I'll tell you, didn't realize how many of these women spoke out against the patriarchy in the church. There's a lot of church pushback from these women, but a lot of these women who were raised in very religious societies, and reading the traditional Bible, they started going through a few of these, and Matilda was part of them. They went through and examined 30 chapters from the Bible and showed how the writings actually go against, it's all about like the patriarchy, and it looks down on women, and that women were not, what you and I think of women as being, equal and fair. Even going back to the story of Adam and Eve in that parable, that Eve was the one to blame for eating the apple. There's
Yes.
a lot of blame put on women. And so these women pushed back, but back
For now.
in the beginning, yeah, exactly. But in the beginning, there was still that strict, where a woman's place was and in the church and where she should be in the family. And Matilda started realizing that women who were smart, a lot of the women we would think of them as scientists at this age, who, when they learned from herbs, there's a lot of, the wise women from the days that
Right.
had like, the things that
Healers.
they knew, healers and stuff like that. And a
Right.
lot of these women, because they didn't just be quiet and listen, they actually spoke out. Their wisdom was challenged, what they knew about from medicines that they learned. And a lot of those women were part of the ones that were targeted in these witch trials. So she started examining that. She wrote in one of her books, actually, I think, wait, because I was reading it and I wanted to bring it up to you. This is
Yeah.
it. In her book, it's called Women, Church, and State, and it's from 1893. She said, the witch was in reality the profoundest thinker, the most advanced scientist of those ages. The persecution which for ages waged against witches was in reality an attack upon science at the hands of the church. As knowledge has ever been power, the church feared its use in women's hands and leveled its deadliest blows at her. I mean, that sums up what was happening then. That's scary. That's scary. And for her to
Yeah.
recognize that, and then, so that's one thing that she really focused on. And if people knew that that was behind The Wizard of Oz and Wicked, all these things that we now enjoy now is like, oh, the good witch and the bad witch, and, with the arts. And you realize her research and her speaking out against it in her family, because her daughter was also a suffragist, and her daughter married the writer of The Wizard of Oz, L. Frank Baum. And they used to talk about these stories, amongst the family. And he would make up stories that he would tell his kids, which were Matilda's grandkids. And he used her stories about women when he was making up these stories about the good witch and the bad witch and the Oz. And it was Matilda who encouraged him to write down these great stories he made up that were influenced by her words and research. And then he writes The Wizard of Oz. We all know that story. We know like
Right.
the bad witch represents the women who are, held down and need to be, hated and ugly, and, notice they make her, deformity. And then there's the good witch who's empowered and she's walks on air basically. And
Exactly.
now we have so all these kids now that are watching Wicked and emulating, the stories that they see in it, they have no idea that track. This is because of the women who were murdered as witches back in the
That's wild.
1600s, and
Wow.
by the church or by the government, the patriarchy. That's why history is so cool, when you
Yeah.
realize what influences things that then become, fairy tales and stories that are for enjoyment. So
Totally.
she's phenomenal. And I knew nothing about her. So I was like, oh my God,
Yeah,
like we need to
same.
know
So
about
that's
her.
why when I went through your YouTube and was listening to stuff, and when I heard that one, I was like, oh, I love this story
You're like,
because
this is
I
a good
never
one.
heard it. Yes, I think when they say the word witch, it represents a strong woman. It's a strong, and I think the
Yeah.
patriarchy is scared of that. That's always been,
Yes.
that's scary for
Yes.
people.
We think of Mother Earth and you think of women and what they give and the miracle of birth, giving birth and their knowledge. It's just, yeah, it's weird that we have to keep women down. Like, why does it have to be a contest? I don't
Right.
know. I don't know enough about it, but I did notice there's a thread through these women. And this is what's phenomenal. There's a thread of the women who they challenged the church, they're questioned it, which is good. You got to question things. That's what higher thinking is. They question the
Yes.
church. They like something just didn't fit right. They also, a lot of these women were very involved in the abolitionist movement. They were all very strong in getting the 13th Amendment passed to get rid of slavery in America. It's crazy. Even from my very first
Wow.
suffragist, looking at Abigail Adams, who was, our
Mhm.
second lady. I mean, so that she even comments to her husband about how can we have a free country when we have people that are not free? Kind of what, just because of their color or where they're
Right. Make it
from?
make
So she
sense.
even brings it up.
Yeah.
And then as I get into the women, the suffragists that we carry on later who are around in the 1800s before the Civil War, they were very much out there preaching about it. That was their first verbal cause of looking out from like, we need to all be free. Slavery should not exist. And then
Yes.
what happened was after they accomplished that, which was great, after they were part of it because these women were out there collecting petitions. Like one of our suffragists that I covered, she had like 400,000 signatures. I mean, imagine this 200 years ago when it's not easy to get around and you're getting 400,000 signatures, presenting it to Congress and being ignored because you were a woman, has been around that long. And then once they accomplished passing the 13th Amendment, our country, then they were able to focus like, hey, look, there actually was a little bit of a rift because it was in between. So the 15th Amendment is when they gave the vote to the black men. That's what the 15th Amendment was for. And that's when there was a rift in the women's movement because they had all been working together and their goal was to get voting for all. But some people thought it was too hard because people still didn't see women as equal. And they thought it'd be easier to get black men because they were men as opposed to all women and black men. So there was this rift between the suffragist movements. Where do we put our energy? So when that passed, then they were all able to come back together and work on women's suffrage. And then that brought us to 1920 when it finally passed. But here we are, a little over 100 years later, and we still have causes we've got to work on. So we're not done. We're not done.
It's insane. And then when you see women out protesting that have been doing it since the 60s, it's like it makes me sad, who are we?
Well,
What is
no,
that?
it's funny. Like, remember when I told you I love like Norma Ray and Sally Field and Unionize? I was like, oh, and I remember like I love Gloria Steinem from the '70s. She was my first
Definitely.
person I saw as an activist. I had her book, and she was reading. People were asking her, and this influenced me too. Like, why don't you run for politics? Why aren't you in politics? And she said something to the fact of, I could do more work outside, like being a speaker from the outside rather than being inside. So that kind of gives you an idea, like you don't have to be the elected official to do the work. And that's where you and I come in, and like spreading whatever messages that we're spreading, where everyone comes in. People protesting right now, they're doing the work. They're not in office. They're there with their one little sign that they made. But you
Yeah.
know what? That one little sign is catching the attention. It's being shown on national news. Who would have thought that, right?
Yep.
It's funny.
Yes.
I went to the hands off march, that they just had. And
Right, right.
there was a couple, it was funny. There was a couple that were like, it's bad when you show up with your ex to when you're working together with your ex at a protest. And I thought and it was just when I got there, I like almost walked into them and I was like I was like, oh my God, that's hysterical. I love that because I was like, how do for an exes to come together for a common cause, it has to be important. And then later on that night, I see them highlighted on one of the news shows. And I'm like, they didn't know that they were going to be highlighted on a news show, but their sign did. And it's like, you don't
Awesome. I love
know,
that.
just do it. They were doing it because they
Yeah.
believed in what they were doing, past whatever personal differences they had. And then
Right.
they're on national news. So
Yes. That's
you never know
awesome.
the ripple effect. That it's one of
Exactly.
the, when you talk about faith, you really have to think, I can't think of you just have to lay that first seed, and just assume that the garden's going to grow, whether it does or
Yeah.
not, you don't know, but we have proof that there's beautiful gardens out there. So obviously those
Yeah.
seeds are growing.
Yes, definitely. And it's funny because I was, back a few years ago, I was out there protesting as well. And what do you say to people that feel defeated almost? Because I feel like for myself, I'm so exhausted, like many people. But I
Yeah.
love that there's people like yourself that they're going out there. But I'm here and I'm supporting, whether it's donating to, foundations or whatever, or to
You're
certain,
doing it. That's
causes.
exactly, you're doing it.
But I'm so tired, like the people that are just tired and feeling overwhelmed. And I feel like I was so angry, and I was so, I didn't feel, I don't know if it's defeat. I don't know if I'm articulating this correctly, but it was more of just like, I don't know if I could do this anymore. And I don't like that feeling, but I know that I'm not the only
Yeah,
one. That
I
was gonna,
know.
that'll transition to my other question. Like, how do you stay motivated to keep this going? I mean, you're obviously very passionate, which I love,
I
and it's
am,
contagious.
but I'm right there with you. I love movies. Aren't we at the part of the movie where the good guy
Oh my
comes and
God.
defeats evil? Like, are we there yet? I'm like,
Yes.
does this have to be one of the long Game of Thrones, 13 episodes,
Oh
three
my
seasons?
God.
I don't want to live it. And we keep thinking, oh, the good guy's going to come in and save us.
Yeah.
And then you think,
Any day now.
any day now, and then you're like, maybe the new movie it's not the one person, it's not Superman, it's not Wonder Woman, it's not Norma Ray that comes in and does it. It might literally be, just as they say, 1,000 little pricks can hurt
Yeah.
something. Maybe it's not the big hero coming in on the white horse this time. Maybe, I'm just guessing, maybe the 1,000 little pricks we're doing will get rid of the big prick.
Oh my God, that's amazing. You
I
gotta
couldn't
coin that.
resist. I couldn't
You gotta
resist it.
coin that. You gotta, it's
I
so
couldn't
true.
resist. I know. And I'm like, maybe that's it. Maybe we're kind of programmed. You think about every single movie, every single TV show, there's the same format. And it's only when one of those movies comes out that's off, and it's like, whoa, that's a different way of telling that story, that we kind of wake up and pay attention. It still comes. So maybe that's
Right.
what it is. Maybe it's not that there is just one entity. Because we aren't one entity. Sure, there's leaders that come out, and we need leaders. I know we're all like, we need our leaders, we need our leaders. But we're also controlled, as much as we're able to communicate, and like having the opportunity with social media is the only way I can get my voice out now, is the way you're getting your voice out. And as much as
Right.
I am also against what social media has done to us in a lot of ways as a society, with everything, there's the good and bad. So I'm like, well,
Right.
let's just keep using it for the good. But maybe that's just it. And that's why I say it could be the littlest thing, that one congressman in Tennessee who voted for women's suffrage gave millions and millions of women after that the right to vote. He was one guy. That what John McCain, who was the one vote back when they were deciding about the affordable care, about health care, and he, didn't abolish it. He was the one vote, went against his party and saved the Affordable Care Act for us. There's all we can do. The main thing to do is to not hide and ignore it. I know, like,
Right.
the main thing we can't do, we can give ourselves a break. I have to give myself a break. And, you have to sometimes tune out. For me, it's funny. Maybe I'm weird, but like my husband right now, it's harder for him to watch politics than we used to watch it a lot more. So he needs the escape of entertainment, sports, or something like that. For
Right.
me, for some reason, I get satisfaction. This is weird. I get satisfaction listening to the politics of the people who I trust and I believe in, and then watching the shows of the people who are not aligned with me politically. But it's almost like a workshop for me. I like hearing what they're saying and answering them in my head, because I feel like I know the facts. Because then,
Okay.
I like hearing both sides, because you have to know what people are saying, or you have to almost know, like, oh, that's how they twist it. they're really good at PR. They're really good at propaganda. They're really good at twisting it. And you realize that's in everything we encounter.
Yeah.
So the
Right.
thing is, you have to know what's going on as much as you can, but you just have to trust something the universe will provide. I really do believe this. The universe will provide what it needs you to do. And maybe the
Mm-hmm.
universe doesn't
Always.
need you to do something immediately. Like we're so like now that we have to do something now. Like I'm a failure. Like I said, I need to run for office. And I'm like, no, I don't. What can I do? Like I said, I'm doing a
Mm-hmm.
podcast. I don't know who's going to listen to it, but I know these women now, their voice at closing curtain in my theater, which is over after a weekend, their voices are now forever in
Yes.
media land. So maybe someone will
Right.
discover them. Who knows? So I'm like, okay, that was my way of finding my outlet. And I love history. I love learning. So for me, the universe presented itself in that way because
Right.
of a
Right.
terrible and anger moment in my life. Like I said, I was
Right.
angry. But I'm not the kind of person, but I'm not that person. I like to think of myself as an optimistic person who thinks the best of people. For me, it's hard to realize, no, there are people who don't have that energy. They exist on negative energy because energy is energy. And there's two ways. There's positive energy and negative energy. And you get energy from both. I prefer being
Yes.
in the positive energy, lifting people up,
Yes.
bringing out the boast. There's room for everyone. There's other people who their energy is power driven and it's me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that lasts very long. It might have a good effect short term, but it doesn't last. So I think the universe, my thought would be it's okay. We have to allow ourselves to be okay with the sadness and the anger and the disappointment. And if it means that you dive in even harder into the good things in your life, like spending more time with your kids or your nieces or nephew or your parents, your family, because you're like, I need to enjoy the good people in my life that have the same, values as me. Or unfortunately, if you aren't aligned, or right now there's a lot of families that are kind of having battles because politically they are separated, find that friend, find that group. There's so many places where you can belong. And I truly believe that a lot of the people that are on the other side of the movement that I'm not a part of, I do believe that they're getting something from belonging to something. So you have
Okay.
to think, I think that I try not to look at them as like them and us, but I do,
Right.
I also believe in you can't just go along with the crowd if it's ultimately wrong. Like we have historical examples from World War II that we are repeating history right now, or we're very close to repeating history. So we have lessons before us. So in that aspect, you can't be ignorant and just like, well, I want to be a part of this group and I'm going to ignore the people who are being harmed. You still have to be a part of society and care about others. But I understand belonging to someone that you feel like is making you feel they're seeing you. And I think that's what a lot of us don't are hungering for. Obviously, through social media, through everything, it's like we need to be seen. We have needs. I'm worried about
Yeah.
get the next paycheck, paying for food for my kids. I'm worried about if I'm going to have a job. I'm worried about my ailing parent who is sick and doesn't have. So we all are going through shit. But there's also when the good things come along, we have to grab them and hold on to them and really enjoy them. And I think that's one of the things that people are doing nowadays. They're
Yes.
trying gravitating to the positive energy to kind of refuel what they're
Yes.
losing through a universal climate of our country right now. I think the universe, like I said, will present it. It will present you with maybe it's just the person asking you to sign a petition at the grocery store. You're
Right.
one of 1,000 people, like in the old days, that signed for the abolishment of slavery. Well, you know what?
Mm-hmm.
There's 400,000 people just like you. Coming together, you're now a huge nucleus. We're powerful.
Boy.
So one candle can light the darkness. And I'm quoting,
Yeah.
that's not my quote. I'm actually quoting that from honestly, a very special show that my sister worked on years and years ago in New York. And it was called it was actually based a religious based thing, but it was literally saying one light, one candle, one flame can light the darkness. And I think we have to think of ourselves as a flame because we all are until we're dead. And even
Totally.
then, and then we're still, and even when we're dead, we're still going. Because
Right? Exactly.
obviously, these women who have been long gone are still coming back.
Yes.
There's some kind of energy coming at me. So maybe they're pricking
Totally.
me from wherever the afterlife is, saying, "Hey, hey, hey, I'm relevant today. You know that Wicked movie that just came out, everyone's loving? Hey, I'm the one that it goes back to the Salem witch trial."
Yes.
Just being funny, but
Wow. I
who
love
knows?
that. No,
Who knows?
I totally believe that.
Yeah, like
Trust
I
me.
can't wait. Like so sometimes I talk to them, like, "All right, yeah, okay, I gotcha.
Yes.
Come on, ladies,
Those
let's
are
go."
those are the guides, you know? We all have
They
guides.
are the guides. They
Yeah.
are the guides. They are the guides. So
That's great.
I think as stressful as we are right now, just don't hide from it. But if you're gonna hide, fine, take a day off. Take some time off.
Right.
We don't have to. You could, but
Like
then
constantly consume
don't constantly
the
take the time
media.
off. And
Right.
then then get back. You fall off a horse, brush yourself off. All right, and then get back on the horse. People who never imagined they'd be in the positions, the places they are as our political representatives, and you hear a lot of those stories. The youngest, male in Congress, AOC, who was a waitress, and I think she said she saw Bernie in a rally on TV while she was wiping tables at her job and decided to get involved.
Right.
Other people from tragedies. We have David Hogg, who was part of Parkland shooting, horrendous thing that's another story. I know, a whole other episode. But what did that do? It fueled him to be a leader in the gun safety measures and try to get common sense regulation. Like he's out there using his tragedy to try to make changes, with what happened with MAD, those Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. It's because of the
Right.
tragedy that these amazing things happen and prevent future tragedy.
Hmm. Yeah. I love how passionate you are about it. I love
Thank you.
because it's encouraging and it's contagious. And so you're
Yay.
definite.
I
Yes. So
love that
you're
you said
definite.
contagious because that was my word this week. Like I've been hearing a lot. Courage is contagious.
Ooh, I like that.
Courage is contagious. So
Yeah.
that'll be our theme for this. This is our courage is contagious. And we're seeing that.
Yes.
We're seeing that in our country right now. Because it was something that when you talk about social media, I kind of, obviously right now my social media, my personal thing is concentrating on promoting, women who kick glass and, my other job, my other work and stuff. But I've been seeing right now, people are starting to talk about people standing up and fighting back, from those
Right.
protests that we're seeing to
Hmm.
people standing up, universities standing up, lawyers standing up, people who actually do have clout and are listened to are standing up for us. So we have to think, sometimes we're the person, sometimes it's someone else bigger than us, and we just have to pay attention and support them. And it might
Right.
be coming down the road. Just be open to it. Just welcome it when it
Yes.
comes. It'll
It's
present
just
itself.
it's layer by layer. That's how I like to see things. Even with, this podcast and just in life now, as I've gotten older, I'm like, just build the layers. Build the layers
Yeah,
because
right.
we don't know where any of this can go, right?
We don't, because no one
With the
started
right,
out. We don't know.
yeah,
We don't
with the right
know.
contagious energy, like you said, we talked about negative and positive energy. You end up magnetizing a certain certain people or an audience or
Yes.
whatever that is.
Yes.
So I love that. I love
Yes.
this.
Yes. Well, it's funny because I did post when I did it. That was something that was brought out. It was like courage is contagious, and I was like, I like that, because everything had been fear, fear. It was been in the negative, and we needed
Mhm.
to. I needed to start hearing reports of people stepping up, because I admire the people that stand up in the face of adversity. I admire
Yes.
the underdog. That's me personally. I've always
Yes.
rooted for
I
the
love an
underdog.
underdog.
That's who I
Yeah, I'm
align
always
with. Like
rooting for
that's
them.
just part of my soul. Exactly. Everything I've done has always been at the bottom and kind of just either by default or what, you work your way up. So I'm like, that's the underdog. Someone who's just like, you don't know some, and then all of a sudden, they're doing it. So it was nice to see the underdogs getting a little bit of good press out there saying, yeah, people are doing this. More and more people. They're courageous. It's contagious. I'm like, yes,
Yes.
keep it
That's such a
going.
great. I love
Let's
that.
keep that going. Exactly.
Well, I like to ask people, what advice would you give to your younger self? Knowing all that you've known and all that you've done, it could be little Ann or it could be your nieces. Like what is some life advice or something that you've learned along the way?
I have to
What
tell you,
what
my
advice?
favorite thing I do I do like that you talked about younger Anne, because that's something that's always been a part of me, knowing that who I was as a kid is still with me. The body changes, the knowledge grows, you have learned lessons, but that's the core. Whatever lottery, whatever thing I picked, that this was the body I was born into, this is who I am. I try to remember that person. And the
Yeah.
advice I would give to the advice I would give to that person is, and it's weird because you hear it, it's don't do what's in your heart. Like, just go forward.
Yeah.
Don't judge yourself.
Yeah.
Don't judge yourself. Don't be so hard on yourself, because I am someone that, yeah, don't judge yourself, because my fault, I am judgmental. I kind of have my opinions, and I know I can be judgmental on myself. But and I'd like to add to that, I didn't have my voice as much when I was younger, and I'll
Okay.
tell you why. Okay, so I'm finding my voice.
Yeah.
I didn't have my voice when I was younger. And it's because I grew up in a very boisterous, loud Italian family, right?
I love it.
A big one. And you know us, you know us.
Yes.
So in
Love it.
any group, there's the people who talk and the people that listen, right? And because, or else there's already a lot of chaos at an Italian table at dinner, but you have to listen to stories. And I grew up listening a lot. And
Okay.
I'm thankful for that. I listened to stories. I listened to my mother's stories, listened to my grandfather's stories. I listened because I didn't have to have the attention of, being the center of attention, because you're a kid and you listen. But
Hmm.
that instilled in me my love of history, because I used to listen to their stories and go on these little imaginations of what they were like when they were telling what the story they were telling me about. And I've always loved books, so I've always loved stories. So listening to stories from people around me when they were younger, what they did, it intrigued me. So when I first came to LA, and I wanted to be an actress, because part of the thing I loved in reading stories is I loved learning about people and thinking to myself, if I was born in that situation, who would I be? And I liked that I was always a good person. I was always a good girl. There was something about that.
Okay.
Like, I just grew up, I was the oldest, so you had to set an example. That was my foundation. So I didn't speak out if something wasn't, I didn't need to, I pretty much had it easy, but I didn't have to really have that role of speaking out. But growing up and seeing that there were times when I could have spoken up for myself, maybe
Hmm.
when I was learning how to be a young woman, and what I
Okay.
wanted. And I did it because I was like, who am I? I don't have the experience. So as an actress, when I first came here, and a lot of things was like, you had to have a lot of trauma in your life to be an actor. And I was like, I have no experience. How could I do this? But
Right.
I had an imagination, and I knew by following, I could get into any character and put myself there and be like, what would I do if I was in that situation? Let me use my imagination. And so when I
Hmm.
first came out here to act, I was like, oh my God, I guess you can't be an actor unless you had a fucked up life. Like, that's wrong. But I was lucky
Right.
that I found a style of acting that focused on imagination. So I was like, oh, this is great. I could be anything in any actor, as an actor.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then as I grew, and as an artist, and I grew into different parts of the arts, but that was something that I didn't think, because I didn't have life experience, that I could speak, that I had something valuable to say.
Okay.
And in one of my first plays, when Josh and I, my husband and I, we were producing and acting, because we got to the point where, like, there's things we need, and it was the author who wrote this play, and
Hmm.
it was the first play we ever produced, and we acted in together, and I wrote him a letter, and I wrote to care of Samuel French, and the author wrote me back, and I asked him, I said, are these people, I wanted to know about the people he wrote about that we were playing. Are these people that you know? Who are these people? And he just wrote me back. And I think this is part of the advice that I would keep for that little girl, is just write what you know, and don't worry about what you know, because you will gain that
Yeah.
experience. Who you are now will lay the foundation, but don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. You will get what you need as you grow on. He just said, he just said, write what you know, and you will know a lot. Yeah, I mean, that was the gist of it. So I was like,
Right.
and that made me look forward to getting older, because that's a hard thing.
Okay.
Everything on nobody looks forward to, like, I want to be in my 20s forever. And now when I look back, I'm in my fifth decade. And like every single decade has been a stepping stone. And every decade, my voice has grown stronger because
Right.
I'm learning who I am as a person. So
Wow.
that's a long way of going to what you asked me. But I think my advice to myself was like, don't worry that you don't know a lot right now. You will. Just keep laying that foundation. Just keep going. Just keep moving forward. Keep moving
Yes.
forward. Don't judge yourself, because we all do. We
Yes.
look at ourselves. We're like, I don't have that. I'm not this. Who am I
Right.
to talk out and speak? And you're like, and now you realize,
Absolutely.
just if it's truly from your heart that you feel the need to speak out, just do. And if you're wrong, be okay to admit that, you might not have gotten all the facts right, because that's another part of growing up. So that's what I would tell myself. Don't stress about it. Just keep moving forward. Life will work its way out.
Yes.
Just enjoy the journey. I remember it was always
Yes.
like, you have to be this, you have to be that. I mean, think about it. You're coming here, you're trying to be in Hollywood as an actor. Isn't that like the top of the pyramid of that's like, hi, my first thing I wanted to do as a kid, because I remember I read in my thing, I wanted to be the first woman astronaut. I want to be the first woman president. Okay, so I guess at a young kid's age, I was already
Yeah.
setting high goals. It's weird that at a young age, I was saying I want to be the first woman. So I don't know where I got that message. And then when I came out here, you're like, okay, I want to be an actor. Yeah, with no connections. Like, I was the first one to move here from my family. Knew no one here. I didn't grow up in it. I didn't know how it worked.
Right. Right.
So, and then I didn't judge myself in retrospect, like, well, that wasn't the path I went down, but that wanting to do that path of being an actor led me to then producing, which then led me to doing this, and which led me to using all of the arts. Like, I knew one thing never changed. I knew I always wanted to be creative and work in the arts and work with people and work in a positive environment. And, so I'm just going down that path. So we'll see where I am. And, I'm just going with it. It's like, we're not guaranteed tomorrow.
Yes.
We're only guaranteed where we are right now. So I guess we have to make
That
the best
part.
of it while we're here, right?
Exactly. I love that. Thank you, Ann. This is awesome.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Did we
Thank
hit
you
our,
so
did
much.
we hit
We
our,
sure
our
did.
how long did I
No,
go?
listen, we can keep going.
It's funny. I laugh. I'm like, wait, we should have said goodbye a long time ago, because I'm Italian. We say goodbye and we say goodbye again in another, like,
Yeah.
another
No,
half
I
hour,
love
right?
that. I love that.
I
No,
know.
but like there's no wrong answer, right? So like
Right.
to that question, it kind of just it closes the convo
Is that
of like,
okay? Thank you.
yeah, so I
Okay.
appreciate
Thank
you
you.
being so upfront and honest and authentic and everything that you're doing with your pod. I'm excited to see what else is going to come out of
Thank
that
you.
and
And
who's next.
thank you. And thank you for letting me share it, because, like I said, when I'm doing this podcast,
Mhm.
it's definitely about the women. It's about the stories I'm trying to share. Like you said, I'm the conduit, right? So it's not about
Yes.
me. It's not like, hi, here I am. I'm like, no, it's about that. Like you, what you're doing, you're being gracious that you're like, I want to you're hearing my story. And I
Yes.
appreciate that, because sometimes you don't know how you feel until it's asked, even from
Exactly.
so thank you for your questions, because sometimes they work their way out and you don't realize, because, talking to yourself, you don't realize. But then when you come out, even if it's one big long run on sentence, which I have a habit of doing. So, but I'm like,
Yeah, no,
don't
same.
judge. Don't
Same.
judge yourself. Don't judge yourself.
Well, thank you for making this easy. This was great. So, thanks again, and I want everybody to follow Ann. Your Instagram handle is
Women Who
okay.
Kick Glass.
You're
On Facebook, Instagram, and then have the on but I'm on Spotify, YouTube. Like all of us, the video part of it is on YouTube and Spotify. So wherever your podcast, it's there. Yeah.
awesome. Thank you again,
Thank
Ann.
you.
This was fun.
You're fantastic.
All right.
So good to see you.
All right. So good to see
shining.
you.
Your energy is shining beautifully, Z.
Thank you. I appreciate.
I love you.
I received that. Love you.
Good. I love you. See you soon. Bye.
Bye, everyone.